Shalom, brothers and sisters. So, we covered a couple of stories last week where we talked about the fact that North Korea has now sent soldiers to Russia for training. Russia's outfitted them and kitted them with uniform and weaponry and shipped them off to the Ukrainian front, and they are there now and getting ready to go in. America and the EU saying, you better not put them on the ground because we're going to send them back to you in body bags. We're not scared. Rah! Punch the chest. But everybody is stressed because worst case scenarios, they take casualties, absolutely they will, but North Korea gains valuable experience facing weaponry supplied by multiple NATO countries so that they get to experience that directly. So they are then ready with that experience to go back to North Korea and re-equip and educate and train themselves for anything that might come from South Korea or America or anybody that wants to attack them when that war breaks out. So that is a big win for North Korea. Russia's got the win in that it's bolstering its meat grinder to push more bodies into the fray and eventually overwhelm it. There was a story in World War II where they admitted that the Panzer, for example, was a much better tank than what the Allies could field. So one Panzer was worth 4 American tanks. But the problem was the Americans could just keep pushing them out. So your Panzer's worth 4 of my tanks, I'll send 5. And then once you've taken out the first 4, the 5th one's going to get you. So we overwhelm you with numbers. And that's the same thing with this meat grinder situation. You keep pushing more and more bodies that are willing to go into it, into that grind. You will overwhelm Ukraine and any of her supporters in the long run. And Zelensky sees this on the horizon clearly. I mean, he's probably put down his wads and wads of cash that he was counting for his own personal bank account, and he's starting to see the writing on the wall here. Zelensky urges allies to act before North Korean troops reach the front. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky urged the allies to stop watching and take steps before North Korean troops deployed in Russia reach the battlefield. And the country's army chief warned that his troops are facing one of the most powerful offenses by Moscow since the war started 2 years ago. Stop watching and do something is what he's saying. Interesting, right? In a time where we're watching and saying people should be watching and being awake to what's happening. Zelensky raised the prospect of a pre-emptive Ukrainian strike on camps where the North Korean troops are being trained and said Kyiv knows their location. But he said Ukraine can't do it without permission from allies to use Western-made long-range weapons to hit targets deep inside Russia. The Biden administration said Thursday some 8,000 North Korean soldiers are now in Russia's Kursk region near Ukraine's border and are preparing to help the Kremlin fight against Ukrainian troops in the days ahead. On Saturday, Ukraine's military intelligence said there were more than 7,000 North Koreans equipped with Russian gear and weapons transported to areas near Ukraine. Now, my other problem here is, and it shows you that this whole Ukrainian situation is a testing ground and a let's see how we tally up against you in the field situation, and a great place for funneling and stealing money over this entire 2-year period. If they were serious about winning this and supporting Ukraine and ending it, you would give them all the weaponry and say, do what you need to do, knock yourself out. Not give them the weaponry and say, right, you can't use this one here, you're not allowed to use that one there, no, you can't attack there. Because if I was in Ukraine as a military commander and I had the weaponry and I knew where these North Koreans were busy prepping to come in and fight, that is a legitimate target to protect Ukraine. Then you would take the shot and stop that from happening before it's too late. Once they're on the ground in Ukraine, it's a different story. So you would hit legitimate military targets. They can't do that without permission because that's not the way this whole situation is being fought. But South Korean Foreign Minister warns that all scenarios are under consideration for aiding Ukraine. South Korean Foreign Minister Tae-yul asked on Friday whether Seoul could send weapons to Ukraine in response to North Korea aiding Russia, saying all possible scenarios are under consideration. All meaning the possibility of South Korean troops going to Ukraine to fight against Russia and the North Koreans. They'll finally have an opportunity to have South Koreans shooting at North Koreans without an explosion on their actual borders. Cho, speaking through an interpreter, told a press conference in Ottawa that Seoul would be watching the level of participation by North Korean troops in Russia and what Pyongyang receives from Moscow in return. And then they will make their decision on how to deploy either weaponry or manpower into the meat grinder in Ukraine so that they then too can get experience, etic, and so on. So very interesting situation developing right there, and this again ties to the whole Europeans, please start stockpiling, because this thing is getting out of hand. Please take the time to pray for all the people caught up in this madness on all sides, especially the civilians and all of the people affected directly by this constant horrific war that's been waged in this area. God bless. Keep looking up. Shalom.